Welcome to another episode of the NT podcast. My name is Nemanja Jurisic, and today we are honored to host Professor Israel Knohl, an Israeli Bible scholar and historian. Professor Knohl, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time. It's really great honor to have you with us here. So let me read this for audience. Dr. Israel Knohl is a senior research fellow of the Center at Shalom Hartman Institute. He has a doctorate in Bible from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where he is the Hezekiel Kaufman Professor of Bible. Professor Knohl has served as a visiting professor at Harvard University, University of California at Berkeley, Stanford University, and the University of Chicago Divinity School. So, Professor Knohl, before we dive into today's topic, would you like to add anything to this brief biography I just mentioned? Perhaps you could share a bit more about your personal and academic journey, what initially drew you to the study of the Hebrew Bible, and what inspired you to devote your life to biblical scholarship.
Okay, the truth is that I started my studies not in Bible, but rather in Talmud. I was in the middle of a dissertation in Talmud, but then I was introduced by some books to biblical scholarship, and I had developed some special interest in the study of the Torah, especially the priestly parts, which were defined by scholarship of that time as the general priestly source, P, but within it a special unique section called the Holiness Code, which is the second part of Leviticus from chapter 17 to the end, and it got this name, Holiness Code, Heiligkeitsgesetz in German, because there is great emphasis in these chapters about the holiness of God on one hand, and the requirement to the people of Israel to become holy, requirements that is based not only on ritual legislation, but also on moral values, like Leviticus 19 is the best example. The commandment to love your neighbor, the commandment to love the strangers. All this is from the Holiness Code. And the common view at that time, when I developed the interest in biblical studies, was that Holiness Code is earlier. It's an early stage of priestly literature, and the rest of the priestly literature is later. So the scholar developed two signs: H for the Holiness Code and P for the rest of the priestly literature, mainly in the first part of Leviticus, some sections in Exodus, mainly those deal with the tabernacle, and also legal stuff in the book of Numbers, and stories also about Korach, etc. In the book of Numbers. All of this was designated P. And the common view by all scholars was that H is earlier than P. So, I was new to the field. What I brought with me from the Talmud department was tools of philology, philology, to cut sources, to ask the question, who is the earlier and who is the later? Which source developed the other? Where is the origins and what is secondary development? So when I applied the tools, philology, the philological tools are objective. They were developed first on Greek literature, on classical Greek literature. The rules are the same in all subjects. So I brought these rules as I studied them in the Talmud department to this issue. And the result that I got personally was that all people are wrong. H must be later than P. It's a secondary development in the priestly school, so to speak. So the question was, am I crazy or all the people wrong? So I started talking to scholars, and well, whenever you come with new idea, with sometimes a revolutionary idea, you will find some conservative people who just are tired. They don't want to hear new disturbing questions. And this was part of the audience of scholars where I tried to share my new ideas. They didn't even want to listen. They didn't. They were old. They didn't want to rethink their views. This was like half of the department in the Hebrew University. But the other half, and also some scholars from outside, like the famous scholars of the priestly materials, Jacob Milgram, and other scholars abroad, were very enthusiastic about my new ideas. And they said, yes, you're right. All people were wrong. Go ahead. Go ahead. Write a chapter. And I wrote a chapter. And the famous scholar Moshe Weinfeld, the Hebrew University, published it in his journal. And finally, I wrote a dissertation, and it became my first book, The Sanctuary of Silence. The main idea was not just an issue of philology, but also theological aspects. I suggested that one of the great disagreements or debates of the age school, the later school, in my view, was about the definition of holiness. Is holiness only an issue of ritual, of sanctuary, priesthood, sacrifices, etc.? But the holiness school came with new definition of holiness, and you can see it in the opening of Leviticus 19. Holiness, if you want to become holy, imitatio Dei, God is holy, you want to become holy, it is a combination of ritual, but also of morality. Love your neighbor, be honest in business, love the stranger, etc., etc. So it was my suggestion that priesthood in Jerusalem was aware and sensitive to the criticism of the prophets like Isaiah, Micah, about the fact that people were absorbed in sacrificial activity and festivals, etc., etc., but at the same time, they behave in an unmoral way. So great criticism of the priestly and temples and sacrifices and festivals. You find it at the beginning of Isaiah 1, in Micah, in Amos, etc., etc. So in my view, H was of the same period, and he was sensitive to this criticism and came out with the answer. Our answer is, well, we agree that the morality is very important, so it should be a combination of morality and ritual under the title of holiness. This was my understanding of the inner development within the priestly school. So this was the beginning of my way in biblical studies. Later, I did other things, Dead Sea Scrolls, origins of Christianity, etc., many, many things.
That's quite amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this. And let me just say, I had one of the students of Jacob Milgram. It's Roy Gain. He was on my show, on my channel. So we talked about Leviticus. He wrote commentary
Yes,
on that book. So
yes,
amazing.
I know
Uh,
him. Yeah, good
oh,
guy.
you know
Yes.
him. Yeah. Great. So, yes, I wanted to ask you, how old is the P source material at oldest stage? Because you
According
date,
to my view.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, from uh, from my words, you could notice that I'm dating the development of the second priestly school, the new priestly school, the Holiness School, to the 8th century BC. I claim that it is contemporary of Isaiah and Micah. So it seems from these arguments that the older material of P must be earlier. And in my view, this is in my book, Sanctuary of Silence, it was composed between the 10th century and the 8th century BC. It is connected to the Solomonic Temple. Let me add one thing more to it, which is connected to a new, I would say, data and issues that I'm dealing with them now. Maybe it will be my new book. We know from historical sources, Egyptian sources and other sources, that there was a major transition in the middle and late Bronze period from the area of what the Bible is called Aram Naharaim. The Egyptians call it Naharina, and this is the place of a kingdom named Mitanni. Let me say northern Syria between the Euphrates and the Hidekel, and from that area, the people of Mitanni, who were originally coming from the Caucasus, they came from the Armenia, with the help of I would say fighters and horse trainers from the Zagros mountain in Iran. Which were called Mariano. They were very strong and militarily very significant. So this group, which was united in this kingdom of Mitanni, went down to the land of Canaan, and they tried to hold the land of Canaan. And many of the rulers of the cities in Canaan in the late Bronze period are bearing names, Hurrian names. The Egyptians even called the land Hur. For instance, in the Amarna letters, the ruler of Jerusalem, I'm talking to you from Jerusalem, the ruler of this city in the Amarna letter is called Abdi Chepa. What's the meaning of the name Abdi Chepa? Abdi is a Semitic word, like Eved.
Is it like a servant?
Huh?
Is it like a servant?
Yes, Abdi is servant. Eved, it's servant. The servant of. But Chepat is Hurrian goddess, one of the main Hurrian goddess. So you can see from this name some kind of combination of local name, local word, Abdi, very common, and a Hurrian goddess. So this means that there was some kind of integration between Hurrian people coming from the north, from northern Syria to Canaan, and local people. This was confirmed in a very, I would say, amazing way recently by a research of ancient genetic material. There is now about 10 years, scholars and in biology developed the ability to take genetic materials, DNA, from bones 3,000 years ago, old. And there was a research, they took like material from 100 people all around the land of Israel and also Transjordan from the Middle and Late Bronze period. And what was found that it was about 50 to 50, namely half of the genetic material was not local. It was from people who came from Horites and with also the Hodo-Iranian fighters from the Zagors. So it means that the land of Canaan in this period was actually not really Canaan. No wonder, because half of the population were Canaanites, the other half, they married one other, so it became a combination. It's not that the Horites stayed aside and they interfere and they got in marriage connection. So, but still, it is no wonder that in Egyptian documents, Egyptian documents, like the famous Merneptah stela, very famous. Why is it famous? Because this is the first time that the name Israel appears outside of the Bible. But if you read the text of the end of the Merneptah stela, you will see that it's like a poetry. And the land of Canaan is called, has two names, Canaan and Huru, the land of the Horites. So the Egyptians were very much aware that this is a land which combined with two elements, Canaanite and Horite. So for this reason, they called it at the same time, Canaan and Huru. How all of this connected to the question about P? Because I'm saying all of this as a reply to your question. Maybe some of the listeners asking, why does it take us to Mitanni, to the Horites, but what's the connection to P? Many scholars who dealt with different aspects of the priestly ritual, let's say purification with blood, the ritual of the sending of the scapegoat, purification from leprosy, many other aspects, found that the best parallels to the priestly rituals are coming from Horite rituals. Sometimes we know these rituals in translation to Hittite because the Hittite copied them. But this is our best parallel to P outside of Israel. So here I come with the suggestion. P was created from the time of the Solomonic Temple on, but it was heavily influenced by the presence of Horite population who came from Mitanni to the land of Israel, land of Canaan, as we know it from the historical documents, and now also from this genetic test. So this is the reason for the great similarity that many scholars point about it. I wrote an article about 15 years ago. P and the sources and the evidence of Syria and North Syria and Anatolia. You can find it in the internet, my article about it. Now it's much more clear how this connection came to be. The heavy migration from there impacted, in my view, they interfered also with the people of Israel, not just with the Canaanite. And they had a heavy impact on the priestly ritual.
Incredible, Professor Knohl. Recently, I talked with Professor Richard Hess, and he drew parallels between Emor festivals and also festivals in the Torah. So there are some striking parallels, and that's
Emor.
from the 13th century. Yeah, Emor.
Yes. Well, this is the same area, Emor. Emor is in the same area of Aram Naharaim, and true, Fleming brought a lot of interesting parallels between Emor and P. That this is very much true. So the Hurrian population who was present in Emor is not far from Haran. All of this has also to do with the claim of the Bible that Abraham and Jacob came from Haran to Canaan. Haran is in the middle of the territory which was occupied by the Horites, and they built their state Mitanni. So in this migration came also some Semitic elements from that area, and this is, in my view, reflected in the book of Genesis. The migration of Semitic elements from the area of Haran for Mitanni, but not just Horite with Horite names, but also Semitic population, which was the original population in this area, also migrated to Canaan.
Amazing. So, would you agree with Professor Gary Rensburg? He argued with linguistic profile in P source that it likely comes from the Solomonic time, 10th century BC, about P source. Is that with no
Yes,
problem?
I agree with him. I agree with him. You know, of course, somebody must raise the question about the knowledge of writing at that period. I agree with Finkelstein and Nadav Ne'eman and many others that wide knowledge, popular knowledge of reading and writing developed only in the 8th century BC. This is the reason why prophetic books, which are popular, I would say, literature, are to be found only from the 8th century BC onward. However, this does not take the possibility that in the centers of government and religion, there were small circles of scribes and priests who knew how to read and write. So there is, I will mention, an interesting article by the late Professor Binyamin Mazar about the scribes of David, the scribe of David. And there are many different versions about the name. Sure, she, Sue. It's a strange name, not Semitic name. And he suggested that this is a Horite name, namely that the scribe of David was of Horite origins. It goes very well with what I was talking. So there was some small circle of intellectuals. We can call them, in a modern term, intellectuals, who served either in the scribes with David and Solomon, or as high priests in the Solomonic temple. And they knew how to read and write, and they were exposed, so I believe, to texts and traditions who came with a migrant from northern Syria, Semitic and Horite at the same. And this is the reason why in the texts of P there is such a great similarity. Michael Fishman even pointed out that not just the contents are similar, but also the form, the structure of priestly literature. With, you have like titles, Zot Torah Achatat, Zot Torah Zevach. This is the law of the sin offering. This is the law of the peace offering. This is the law about leprosy. So formulas of introduction, and at the end, it is repeated in colophon. Zot Torah Tachatat, Zot Torah Zevach Hashem. This is the law of the sin offering. This is the law of the peace offering, etc., etc. And he pointed out that in the Horite ritual, as we know them in Hittite translation, you will find the same structure. So the impact, in my view, is not just contents, but also form. And I think this is very, very important. So you should look at P in some way as, what would I say, a branch of the old tradition of cult in northern Syria, Emar, Haran, Kizuwatna, which is a city between the Hittites and the Horites. It is a branch with one major change. What is the major change? We are not speaking about many gods, but only about one God, Yahweh. This did not come from northern Syria, but rather from Sinai, from Seir, from Edom. The idea of the one is a southern idea. The ritual is a northern ritual. So if I have to put it in a formula, I would say what we see in the Torah is a combination of northern ritual with the southern ideology of the one God. This is what we have. It's a new combination. This is the new idea of the Bible and the Torah.
That's quite amazing. That's a Midianite Kenite hypothesis. Do you accept that Moses was in Midian and he found out about Yahweh cult? Would you agree with that?
What this is a possibility. I think Moses was a historical figure. The name is a very well known Egyptian name, like the Moses in Ramses. Moses means Ra. Moses means the child of the god Ra. So Moses is just born off without the divinity name. Probably there was an Egyptian divinity name connected with, but it was Ka. So the name is perfectly Egyptian, good Egyptian name. I don't want just to put all the, I would say, the connection with Midianites and Canaanites on Moses' marriage with the daughter of Jethro, who was the priest of Midian. This is possible, but in an article that I wrote like maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, which was published in Vetus Testamentum. The article was called Jacob El in the Land of Esau and the Beginning of Biblical Religion. I claimed in this article that Egyptian inscription from the time of Ramses II mentioned the group in the name Jacob El, surrounded by several groups of worshippers of the god Cows, who was the Edomite god. And unlike previous scholars who didn't take this in account, I claim that this is an evidence that a group named Yaakov El was present in Edom in the 13th century BC, and this is probably the background of the story of Jacob and Esau in the book of Genesis. My interpretation to this Egyptian text was supported recently by an article of Professor Daniel Kahn in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology. He supported my claim. So let's look at it. An early group, one of the groups that later on became Israel, the group called Yaakov El, is present in the Edom in the 13th century BC. But we know, on the other hand, that at the same period, time of Ramses II, and also 1 year later, in the time of Amenhotep III, the father of Akhenaton, we have an inscriptions about people Shasu of Yahoo, some Bedouin tribe called Yahoo in the same area, similar area, near Seir, near Edom. So my claim is that you don't need the story of Moses and his marriage. I don't say it's non-historical. Possibly it is historical, but I would like to claim, and this is what I claimed in this article, that even without it, you have group of early Israelites or pre-Israelites named Jacobel in the land of Edom, and they are neighbors of those who worship Yahweh even in the 14th century BC. So the knowledge of Yahweh, the worship of Yahweh, could come through this geographical connection between Jacob in Adam and the early group of Yaakov, their neighbors, the Midianites, the Canaanites, who are probably the Shasu of Yahweh. So there is a wider possibility to the connection Midian-Israel, not just dependent on the story of the marriage of Moses, which can be historical, as I said.
Quite amazing. Thank you so much, Professor Knohl. Yes, we have also texts from Habakkuk and Deuteronomy. So yeah,
Yes,
that's quite.
Habakkuk,
Yeah.
3 about the Yeriot Eretz Midian, yes, and of course Deuteronomy 33, Adonai Misinai Ba V'Zarach Miseir Lamo, the song of Deborah, Adonai Betzitcha Miseir Betzadcha Misdedom. All sources, all the old poems are pointing to the same direction, south, not Egypt, but south of Jordan, possibly northern Saudi. But in this area, around Petra and Eilat of today, Aqaba, the same. This is the area.
Yes, so that's archaic Hebrew from 11th, 12th century BC. But would you say that Moses wrote something in the history and that was passed down to generations, and some authors of Torah collected some sayings of Moses or traditions? Would you say like that?
Are you asking me if what was written in the Torah by Moses himself? This is the question.
Yeah, I don't believe that he wrote anything from Torah, but did authors of Torah use some materials that was passed by generations that is coming from Moses even? Would you say that?
Yes, I believe that the emphasis of worship of the one God and the rejection of idols. Namely, we have the Ten Commandments. The first two might be go all the way to the time of Moses. I think so, yes. And this is, we know that the Canaanite, the Midianite, when they came, they were, besides their religious ideology, they had also the unique knowledge of manufacturing of copper. They were the experts on copper. So when the Egyptians started to try to produce copper near Eilat of today, in the locations that we call it now Timna, they invited the Canaanites to work with them in the manufacture of copper, because they were the expert, the high-tech people of copper manufacturing, and they gave them good food and good dresses. Everything was kept in this very hot and dry climate. Offer from Ben Yosef of Tel Aviv University, he found it. And we know there that the Egyptians built a temple to their goddess of copper. And at a moment when there was the great crisis of the transition between the Bronze period and the Iron period around 1200 BC, the Egyptians had to leave. They left Timna. When the Egyptians left, the Canaanite Midianite group on the place, they went to the Egyptian temple, to the goddess Hathor, who was the goddess of love, war, and also of copper. And they took, there was some standing stone with the face of Hathor. They smashed the face of Hathor and took the stone and put it in a cultic tent they built there. You can still see the stone standing there. So they were anti-iconic, and they believed in Yahweh. This is, I think, very, very important. I believe Mosaic religion is very much connected with the Canaanite, Midianite tradition. So if I try to combine what I've said now and what I've said before, I would say like this. The land of Canaan, the land of Israel, has a very unique, and this is true even today, very unique geographical location, because it is some bridge and connection between the north, from Mesopotamia to Mitanni to Anatolia, the Hittites, and the south, Egypt, Midian, Edom, etc. So there is some, I would say, dual and parallel streaming to Canaan from both sides, from the north and from the south. And I believe that biblical literature and biblical ideology and biblical ritual is and very much an impact of the meeting between these two streams. The northern stream, which brought with it ritual, also the custom of anointing the king, is known only in northern Syria and in Anatolia, not in other countries. This also came from the north. Anointment, Mashiachiyut, came from the north. And from the south came the major ideas of one God, no worshipping in idols, and some more important issues. And they were combined and connected in Jerusalem. This is broadly the process that I see.
Really interesting. Thank you again, Professor Knohl. So I want to know, what do you think about narrative sources such as JE or non-P? Benjamin Mazar would point out in his article that Genesis mainly comes from the Solomonic times. So would you agree, or what do you think about that position?
No, I don't agree. I don't agree. I spoke about royal and Celtic literature written in the 10th century, namely, can be some chronology, maybe some proverbs in the court of the king, and also Celtic materials written in the main sanctuaries, Jerusalem or Bethel in the north. The stories, I believe, were written for the people, and they were written only at a time when there was a significant part of the people with the knowledge of reading and writing. So, in a recent book, maybe I will bring it and show it. This is the book, Biblical Sinai Tradition, came out last year by Palgrave Macmillan. Biblical Sinai Tradition. I claim that the earliest version of the story was written in the Northern Kingdom in the last generations of its existence. Because as we can see in the prophets, you can see that probably literacy was developing in this order. In the first part of the 8th century, it started in the north. The two first prophets that their books were written are Amos and Hosea, who were active in the northern kingdom in the first half of the 8th century BC. So there, I believe, in the same time as Hosea, there was a person which we call him in biblical scholarship E, and I believe that he was the first author of stories, both in the book of Genesis and in the book of Exodus, the Sinai story. And somehow his composition survived the Assyrian conquest, which happened around the year 725, and came to Jerusalem. Not fully. E starts, what was left with E is starting now in Genesis 20, the story about Abraham and Abimelech. This is not where you start to tell the story. So I'm sure the beginning of P existed. There was an E version of E. Sorry, E. You are talking about E, the northern author. For sure, he also wrote about creation and the flood, etc., etc. But we lost it. Maybe, they ran away from the Assyrian and the scroll was torn and the first part of the scroll disappeared. We have leftover of E. Great. It's a pity that we don't know how E described the creation. But these are the facts. This is what we have. In my view, when E came to Jerusalem, we are talking about around 720 BC, there was a circle in Jerusalem who absorbed E and wrote a response, a Judean response about the stories of the beginning, creation, the patriarchs, what happened in Sinai. This is, in my view, J. So I date J. An article of mine about J is going to be published in a first trip for my friend Gary Anderson, which should come out in a short time. I wrote an article about J. I believe that J is around 700 BC, and this is why, for instance, the story of the Tower of Babylon, as many scholars pointed out, is very much built on what happened with Sargon and his city Dur-Sharrukin, who was destroyed and deserted. So this is my view about E and J. To put it short, E is northern, around 750 BC, was brought to Jerusalem, supplemented, edited by J, who is around 700 BC.
Very good. Professor Knohl, so would you exclude the possibilities of 7th, 6th, 5th, or later period centuries that J, E, and P were written in those times later?
No, it's not when I give, for instance, when I say H started in the 8th century BC, I don't claim, and I never claimed, that H did not continue to be creative later. in the time of the exile, and even after the exile. In my view, and here both Jacob Milgrom and myself, we share the same view that H continued to work through the time of the exile to the present period, and they were the editors of the Torah. I wrote about it already in my book, Sanctuary of Silence, and in several articles. And Milgrom wrote about it in many places in his magnificent commentary to Leviticus, that the group of H are the editors of the entire Torah. So in this way, when I speak about the beginning of an activity of a group, it's not just that this is the whole time of the activity of this group. E is exceptional. E is exceptional because due to the destruction of the northern kingdom and the exile of the 10 tribes and their disappearance in the melting pot of Assyria, he did not have continuation. However, and here I claim to the one source that we did not mention, I believe that in many sites we can look about Deuteronomy as some continuation of E, because E and Deuteronomy, and this is also something that I've already mentioned in the Sanctuary of Silence, E and Deuteronomy share the same view about the presence of God. Where is God's presence? And they share the same view that I would say, the regular place of God is in heaven. From time to time, he can go down to earth, to the prophetic tent of meeting, the tent outside of the camp that is mentioned by E in the Exodus 33, Deuteronomy 11, Deuteronomy 12. Not to be, it's a completely different from the priestly tent of meeting. So, and also in Deuteronomy, the place of God is in heaven, but from time to time, in time of war, in time, he can go down and be with you, but then he goes back to his, I would say, constant place in heaven. This is also the Solomonic prayer in Deuteronomy, in Kings 1, chapter 8, which is Deuteronomistic text, no question. So this is one view of E and D. In contrast, in a sharp contrast to the priestly understanding that God's presence must be felt and worshipped in the center of the camp, in the tabernacle, in the priestly tent of meeting, which is inside the temple, and the old temple furniture, as I would say, the ark, the menorah, the table are symbols of the constant presence of God within the tabernacle. This is P and this is H. So this is, I would say, great disagreement between, we can say, North and South, priests and non-priests. G, E and D in the one hand, and P and H on the other hand.
Amazing. Dr. Knohl, do you have an example that there is an influence on age from the Persian period, some loan words or something like that?
Yes, that's true. We do have.
Can you
Baruch,
give examples? Yeah.
Baruch Levine wrote about the words Mishcha, the name Parnas, etc. There are we have a few Persian words, and this is not a surprise. If the editorial process took place in the Persian period, no wonder that you will find several Persian words and concepts. Yes, but I would say if you look in a wide way on the Torah is not a product of the Persian period. It was edited in the period, but I would say that I believe that the great part of the materials are before the Persian period.
Right. Okay. And about Deuteronomy, if that comes from a 7th or 8th century BC, why don't we have any mention of Jerusalem? Do we have maybe some reflections on that? What do you think?
Okay, you know, I believe with Martin Knott and others that an early version of Deuteronomy was already written in the north. This is why the covenant around Shechem in Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal is so important in Deuteronomy. Basically, Deuteronomistic legislation is put in the book with introduction about the covenant in Shechem. And at the end of the legislation, you come back to the same covenant. So you see the framework of the Deuteronomistic legislation is the covenant near Shechem. So it is possible that when the authors of the law of centralizations of the cult in Deuteronomy 12 wrote about the place that God will choose, they didn't have Jerusalem in their mind. It is possible that the Samaritans are correct when they add Mount Gerizim, namely that if it was created in the northern kingdom, why should they think about Jerusalem and not about Shechem? They are talking about a covenant in Shechem. So I think they left purposely the issue open. They didn't want to take upon themselves the decision. They said, God will choose. So our book can be read by people from the north and people from the south. We are not obligated to a specific location. I think it might be a diplomatic decision not to say the name of the location.
Incredible. I didn't know that view, so thank you. Okay, and after all this that we covered about the composition of Pentateuch, can we just briefly discuss about early stage of monotheism? You described it briefly, but can you say more? Was it something like henotheism at the beginning of Israel religion, or was it strict monotheism? What do you say?
I would say it's not a perfect monotheism, namely the ultimate monotheistic formulation, namely there's only one God and there is nothing besides him. This you find in Deuteronomy, Isaiah, and it is from the Persian period. But look on an early piece of poetry like the Song of Deborah. you wouldn't find there any. I mean, God is acting. No other God is in combat with him. No other God is mentioned as a significant enemy. So I believe that already in the very early period, Song of Deborah, probably 11th century BC, there was a form of monolatry, namely worshipping of one God, and in early Israel. If you will, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, in the early, and this was noted by several scholars, in the early villages, tiny villages, which are so typical of the Bronze One period, namely the period of Judges. Hundreds of small villages, mainly in the location of the tribe of Menashe, Ephraim, Benjamin. This is the great center of Israelites settlement in the Iron One age. They don't find there icons of other gods. From time to time, you will find an animal like a bull icon in the area of Menashe, was published by Amichai Mazar, but not a figure of anthropomorphic figures. I don't think it just happened this way. It is another proof of I would say, the obligation of the early people of Israel in its earliest presence in the land of Canaan, the period of the Judges, not to worship icons and idols. So as said, the two first commandments were absorbed by the people in a very significant way. So I know that this is not what is said in the book of Judges. The book of Judges blames them again and again of idolatry. I think it's propaganda from the royal period. The book of Judges was edited in Jerusalem in the time of Josiah, and the scribes of Josiah blamed the people of the time of the Judges in many things, and they said they were idol worshippers. I think archaeology disprove it. They were very faithful to the worship of one God without idols. So this is not, you can't call it full monotheism, but it is not far from it.
Amazing. Something like in Chronicles, we have mentioning that in Solomonic temple, there was music and many things, but in P source, we have nothing about that. So later books are.
How to relate to the priestly silence, which is the title of my book, Sanctuary of Silence, which I borrowed from the late Yechezkel Kaufman, with what is described in Chronicles about the Levites as singers. This is the question. I dealt with this question in an article which was published many years ago. I don't remember exactly when. It is in JBL. It is called Between Voice and Silence. Between Voice and Silence. And I said that the temple was like a circle within a circle. In the center, there is the priestly circle, which was absolutely silent. not only in the first temple period, also in second temple period, when the rabbis added several prayers, like in fast days, not inside the priestly area, but only in the borders. The high priest, according to rabbinic understanding, when he served in the Day of Atonement, he say a prayer about the people. Where did he say this prayer, according to rabbinic sources? Not inside. Naturally, you would say, oh, he came to the Holy of Holies, let him pray there when he's so near to God's presence, let him pray there. No. ומתפלל תפילה קצרה בבית החיצון. When he come out, this is where he prayed. The center, the priestly center, remained silent. But this priestly silent center was surrounded with the second circle. This is where the Levites, with the songs, with the Psalms, Levitical second circle with priestly singing. The outer circle is the circle of the people, and the people pray. So you have like three circles: priestly silent in the center, Levites singing the Psalms in the second circle, and in the outer circle, the people with their prayer. This is the picture as I see it.
Great. And we in Amos have verses that say, remove from me music. So that's 8th century. But if Amos said that in 8th century, certainly those parts and descriptions in P source are earlier than Amos. Would you say like that?
Well, Amos, let me put what I said in a wider picture. My claims about a silent priestly center are based on the book of Leviticus, which in my view reflects the reality of Jerusalem Solomonic Temple. It is not a statement about the situation in other cultic centers in the land of Israel. Namely, you can see in the story of Hannah and Eli in the beginning of the book of Samuel that in Shiloh of that time, 11th century BC, women could come inside the temple or the tent, depending what was there in Shiloh. I don't want to go into it. But there was a cultic center. And women were allowed to come inside, and as we saw, Hannah was praying inside the temple or the tent. So this is the reality of Shiloh. It is completely against the rules of P. Women were not allowed to go inside the Solomonic temple, and no one was allowed to pray. So Shiloh was different from Jerusalem. When Amos is giving his testimony, he is in Bethel. The reality of Bethel should not be behaving or under the rules of P. The claim is a claim only on Jerusalem, not on other cultic centers.
Amazing, Professor Knoll. Let's get back to monotheism. I just have one question more. Do we have parallels between Akhenaten religion and Moses?
Moses
Because,
and Akhenaten. I was sure that
yeah,
this question will come on the floor. Not easy, not easy to answer. Of course, Moses was not, as Freud claimed, a direct student and follower of Akhenaten. What happened is that what we know from archaeology is that after the time, Akhenaten ruled for a very short period, and even I would say that the time of his religious revolution, I would say it like 8 years or something like this. Very dramatic, very impressive. And then he died. What happened? Natural death, a murder? We don't know. We don't know. The fact is that he had 6 daughters out of his beautiful, famous wife, Nefertiti. But they were daughters. The son, his famous son, was a child. This is the famous Tut Ancha Ammon that his tomb was revealed, and we have all the treasures from this tomb in the Cairo Museum. This was not the name that was given him by his father. When he was born, he was called Tut Anch Aten, with the name of Aten, of course. Aten, the god of the sun, the god that was worshipped as the only god by Akhenaten. Ammon was very much objected by Akhenaten. He closed the gates of the god Ammon. I would say his main war was with the priests of Ammon. So what happened? When he disappeared, when he died mysteriously, Tutankhamun, his vizier, who later became a pharaoh, and his minister of war, Horemheb, took the child, changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamen. They left the city, which was built, the capital, which was built by Akhenaten, what we call now with the Arabic name Tel El Amarna, but was called Achet Aten, at the horizon of Aten by its builder Akhenaten, and went back to the traditional cities of Tanis and Noamon, Luxor in the south, either Tanis in the or the area of Cairo or the area of Luxor, the traditional capitals. And the city was destroyed. The temples of Aten were closed. The high priest of Akhenaten became quickly, very quickly, we find him following the temple of Ammon and becoming back a priest to the god Ammon. So, how deep was the revolution of Akhenaten? Who really believed in it? I Sometimes I have the feeling that it was only the royal couple, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, maybe the elderly daughters, the three elderly daughters, who could understand something. So there were 5 followers of the religion of Aten, true believers. Sometimes this is my suspect that all other immediately after the death of Akhenaten, they left everything and destroyed everything. So how strong could be the impact? Yet, on the other hand, we see Psalm 104, Barchi Nafshi, which is many scholars pointed out to the great similarity between this psalm and the psalm that probably Akhenaten himself wrote to the god Aten and was found in this city. So how the knowledge of this beautiful poetic literature praising the god Aten found in its way to our book of Psalms, in a psalm which doesn't have very clear signs of old language. Who kept it? Who brought it to the land of Canaan? How it found its way to the Bible? Many mysteries. I don't have a clear answer to the question. On the one hand, as I said, I think that this revolution did not have great impact on Egyptian society. But on the other hand, you see some impacts in the literature, not just in the Psalm 104 also, and this was pointed out by Jan Assmann, that religious poetry in Egypt after Akhenaton has some tendency toward the one. It's not monotheistic, but it is different from the early period. So even though Akhenaton was so much hated and his name was, disappeared, he is not in the list of the pharaohs, but it had some impact. So the correct answer that I can give is I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's an open question. Maybe some findings in the future will help us to decide about it.
Really interesting story. And what about his father? He had some tendencies, I think, Amenhotep III, toward the one God. Would you agree? Or
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's an we have this the first place where we have this description of the Shasu of Yahweh is in the temple of Amenhotep III, but it is just a description of the tribes in Transjordan. I don't think it is connected to his own belief. There was some kind already, this is also Asman, some emphasis on Ammon as the center of religion. This is true, even before Akhenaten. Akhenaten did not invented it all by himself. There was some kind of tendency in the time of Amenhotep III, but I would not call it monotheism or some emphasis on the one.
yes, but was Akhenaten monotheist? Because Hofmeyr would argue that, and other scholars would say it's like pantheism or henotheism. So what was it?
Well, in my view, it's an I there's a talking about the one God. And if you will compare it to what was the situation before, let's take the section about the night. Before Akhenaten, it was imagined that the sun during the nighttime is going down to the earth of the dead people in the west, and all the time of the night, the sun is going through river and has a war against a dragon with the name of Apophis. And every night there is a combat between the sun and the dragon. And if the dragon will win, we will not have the sun in the next day. But luckily, every night, the sun overcomes the dragon and appears again in the morning in our world. This is a great cosmic drama. Akhenaten got rid of it. Nothing happens in the night. I mean, the lions are roaring, but nothing seriously. The god does not do anything at night. So you can see the change from the many to the one. And, well, I know some scholars call it philosophy of nature. But there is a God there, and this God, like the God of Israel, has no female partner, has no biological sons. Akhenaten calls himself a son of Aten, but not in a biological way. Many points of similarity to the Hebrew Bible. I know Yechezkel Koifman also tried to say, no, this is not the real thing. In my view, it is the real thing very much with Akhenaten.
All right, thank you. And Professor Kaufman think that there was no gradual process from polytheism to monotheism, but rather it was at the beginning something like monotheism. So is it a more complex theory or hypothesis or than polytheism, or what do you think?
Now, you see, I take seriously Akhenaten, and also I take seriously the Shasu of Yahoo. So unlike, both were rejected by Koifman. Both were rejected by Koifman. Koifman was very much with a tendency to build the religion of the Bible as an absolute creation ex nihilo, from the nothing. Everything was new. He even also claimed that there was no what he called apostolic prophecy, namely a prophet who is sent by God to the king with a moral demand. This was also invented by the Bible. What happened is that few years later, in Mari, they found prophecies sent to Zimrilin, the last king of Mari, from the god Hadad by a prophet with the name Abia, asking him to behave morally, to do justice to the poor man. So, Kaufman, I don't know. I mean, his neighbor in the last years of Kaufman's life, he lived in a building in the neighborhood of Rehavia. And in the same building lived also Professor Abraham Malamat of the Jewish History Department in Hebrew University, was an expert of Mari. So I don't know if he never came to Kaufman and say, Kaufman, please, you were wrong. It existed in Mari, 18th century BC, much time before the Bible. I don't know. I heard stories from him, from Malamat about Kaufman, but not about this. So I don't know. So in my view, there are new ideas in biblical religion, but it is not creation ex nihilo. I don't think it's a creation ex nihilo.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Professor Knohl. Do you know maybe when Kaufman dated peace source? I don't found anywhere his direct statement. So what do you think?
No, Kaufman Kaufman was in the view that P is connected probably with Shiloh very early. I don't. I wouldn't push it that early. Solomonic Temple. This is my suggestion.
So Shiloh, was it a period of a pre-monarchic period of
Pre-monarchic.
judges? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
All
Kaufman
right. Yeah.
thought it's connected to the pre-monarchic period, but this is too early for me.
Yeah, totally. So, but in your work, I found a term before 8th century. You didn't say quite 10th century or Solomonic, but
Okay,
why?
between the 10th and 8th century. This, it's not. I don't look at it as a creation of one person. I think it is a school, and a work of school takes time. It's not in 1 year. They write something, they add more, they correct, they change. It is a process. For this reason, I give it like 200 years. Something like this.
Yes, but it started from 10th century, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, last question. Before Deutero Isaiah, would you say, is there any strict monotheistic statement about God of the Israel or no? Is it the first time in the Tanakh or Old Testament, Hebrew Bible, or no?
In the sense that other gods do not exist at all, something like this.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that it started in the time of Deuteronomy, probably as because some of the statements appears in Isaiah 45 in a passage that is related, directed to Cyrus. It is a possible connection to make that at least we don't know exactly what was the belief of Cyrus, but Zoroastric religion probably already existed in Persia. So it is logical to claim that the emphasis on the one who is both the creator of light and darkness, good and evil, is within a polemic with Zoroastric religion, which claim for duality. That is, the good God, Ahura Mazda, is the creator of good and light, and Ahariman, the evil God, is the creator of darkness and evil. So it is possible that the conflict with a dualistic religion, which was something new for biblical authors. Till this period, they had a debate with polytheistic religion. Now it was a conflict with dualistic religion. This was the thing that pushed Dr. Isaiah to formulate this belief in such a strict and clear words. It is not to say that nobody believed in this way in the time before.
Yeah, and what would you say to scholars like Dan McClellan and others that point out that in the Torah, Isaiah, statements like "there is no God beside me," that also said Ishtar and other gods in polytheism. So that's not quite clear monotheistic statement.
Yes, well, I don't think that we have any evidence for monotheism. The closest thing, Ishtar is not, it's just poetry. The only thing in Mesopotamia that might come close at the beginning, I would say, Assyrian religion, it is not that clear, but there is a great emphasis on the god Ashur. Later, they created him a family, and there are many gods, but the question is and it is not clear, we don't have clear evidence. But would I go for Mesopotamian monotheism? I would go to where the early period in Assyria about the god Ashur, before he was brought with marriage, with family, and other gods, etc. The early Assyria, you should check there. I'm not sure, but this might be a possibility.
Yes, but we have Asherah in Israel in earliest times. So what about her?
Well, of course, when the Bible came with the demand or statement uh, that there only this God, and there are he has no family, he was not born, he would not die, he has no female partner. This, of course, led to the rejection from the priestly, at least in the priestly circle, of all female deities, and also the unique situation of the cult where only males were allowed to the temple and could serve the Lord. This is connected with what I said before about Hannah and her prayer. According to the priestly legislation, women not even allowed to enter the temple. So, of course, they could not serve in the cult. So, not everybody was happy with it. Many people, I'm sure many women in ancient Israel were not happy with it. And they said, what about us? What about our needs with pregnancy and giving birth? Whom shall we call? Shall we call Yahweh? He's not involved in such issues. We want a feminine figure. And this is, I believe, the reason why we see so many icons in the monarchic period of female figure, probably Asherah, and also the text about God and his Asherah, and also Niev in the colony of Israelite soldiers in the Persian period, they had a different suggestion: God and Anat Yahweh. So this is the religion of the people. It's not the religion of the priests. So there was a difference.
Okay, Professor Knohl, thank you so much. Any final word conclusion for people that want to study more these topics that we covered about dating sources of Pentateuch or monotheism in Israel? Any advice?
Well, I think always be open for new ideas. The development of science is with new ideas, but new ideas, you have to be selective to try to read them with one open eye and the other eye very critical. But there are always new ideas, new discoveries, even in the, say, mentioned technological things like checking ancient DNA. Who thought about this possibility? So there is a progress. We should be listening to the new findings.
Okay, Professor Knohl, thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. Your work offers a fascinating window in development of Israelite religion and the composition of the biblical texts. To our audience, if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share MT Podcast. And as always, stay curious, stay faithful, but never stop asking hard questions. Goodbye.